If rolling killing a musk ox barehanded with just a knife and clubbing a wild boar to death is already a complete crush on the other contestants, then Nelu, who uses traps to take down 2 big sea otters and even builds a small dam to raise fish in the Arctic wilderness, is delivering a full-on dimensionality reduction strike against ultimate wilderness machine Roland.
Yeah! What the
By now, the Arctic is locked in ice, and Nelu's survival strategy has begun to shift. Before winter, most of his food came from sea otters and rabbits caught in his snares. But when the Arctic sank into deep winter, the dam Nelu built earlier ended up becoming his winter pantry. From day 39 on, after the river fell, Elk found a spot full of stranded minnows, and by scooping them up, he shattered the alone record with 89 fish in a single day. Who else could manage that? And it doesn't stop there. Elk's been scooping up small fish there almost every day, and sometimes he pulls in a whitefish. Then today, when Elk heads back to the dam for more, he sees the dam is suddenly packed with big whitefish. Just like that, this little dam has become Elk's own private fish farm. He can't possibly eat that pile in one go, so Elk just shrugs and grabs a smaller fish.
Nice, that's a good size.
And you think, is this guy human? If the others heard that, they'd be angry enough to swing a fist. In this kind of deep freeze, any other contestant wouldn't hesitate. They'd grab the biggest fish. Only Nelu has so many fish that he's actually troubled over which one to eat. Today, Nelu only takes 12 fish, 1 decent-sized whitefish, plus a bunch of little fish that leapt onto the dam and got stuck. Those 12 fish easily cover what he needs to eat for the day, to make sure the big white fish in the dam truly become his personal stash. Before heading off, Nelu strings a gill net across the dam's sole entry and exit channel. No matter if the whitefish inside try to slip out or new fish try to swim in, they'll all end up in this net. Once the gill net goes in, almost without anyone realizing, Nelu's food setup quietly clicks into a fully closed loop. With the fisheye gill net and his land traps advancing together like a 3-deer formation, Nelu is now firmly in an unbeatable position. That plain-looking net, lying quietly in an ordinary bend of the river, is sure to deliver big surprises in the days ahead, and just thinking about it makes Nelu break into a little dance.
Come on, catch me some fish. Get on that. Catch me some fish.
And when the river finally locks up in ice, drilling through and fishing below will remain central to Nelu's game plan. In his spare time, Nelu starts making snowshoes in the shelter, getting thoroughly prepared for the coming days of ice fishing. First, he finds 2 long, thin sticks, lashes the 2 ends together with cord, then eases them open into a frame, and adds cross pieces one by one. This design is something Nelu learned from past season contestant Gill. It has to be said, the Battle of the Gods in Season 7 of Alone in the Wilderness really did give many later contestants a wealth of survival know-how. A lot of skills that look like personal talent are actually answers left behind by generations of people through constant trial and error. With the last crosspiece fixed in place, the main frames of the 2 pairs of snowshoes finally take shape. Next, he just needs to gather more thin branches to weave the bottoms, then make straps to secure his feet, and this set of Arctic mobility gear will be ready for action. Up to this point, Elk seems to have prepared everything he needs to face the Arctic winter. Just with that one dam plus fish farm play, it's almost impossible to picture him losing, even on purpose.
50 days in the wilderness. Whoa!
Nelu wants to keep this dance going right up to the champion stage, but before he can walk onto it, he still has to keep making the rounds on his traps. Those whitefish are his steady pantry. Whether yesterday's gill net will really deliver is still up in the air. As Nelu steps up to the net and peers down to check it, he spots a whitefish caught in the mesh. The weight on his mind finally lifted.
There is a whitefish in my gill net. It's a good sign. Day 50!
He's practically bursting with joy now, remembering how just recently he was fretting over one failed cast after another. Yet the fish dam is suddenly turning out a steady haul. The gill net has finally landed its first fish too. The fishing setup he used to be worst at is now being slowly brought to life by him. But the happier he gets, the stronger his longing for home grows. He just wants to finish this quickly and go home to his family. Nelu chips at the river ice with his axe. The big whitefish is hauled up through the freezing water along with the gill net.
Yes!
These big whitefish just added several more pounds of leverage to Nelu's hand. With the gill net in place, Nelu heads into the forest to check his snares, walking along and wishing he'll snag a rabbit. But right after making that wish, he feels he already has more than enough food. Earlier, he'd even let a rabbit go because he'd hunted a sea otter. He'd just proved how tangled people's hearts can be. Yet the moment a rabbit actually turned up in the snare, Nelu lit right up.
Oh my gosh, I got one. I got a snowshoe.
Yet just as he's about to pocket this rabbit, God gives him a surprise in another form. The rabbit broke free of the trap, leaving only a torn snare behind. then turned and vanished into the snowy field. Nelu hadn't even reacted yet. He just stood there, dumbfounded, watching the meal that was almost in his mouth sprint away before his eyes. Most people in his spot would just mentally collapse.
Oh my gosh. I'm in shock.
Feels just like that roadside wish from when he arrived coming true. He'd wanted a rabbit, so God gave him a rabbit. But then Nelu felt he already had more than enough food, so God snatched the rabbit back. And Nelu sat there stunned for ages, unable to believe what had just happened. He decided to follow the direction the rabbit had fled to see if there was still a shot at turning things around. Maybe God was teasing Nelu, but the river god had always treated him kindly. Right as he's about to turn back for camp, the lakeshore suddenly erupts in noise. From afar, Elk spots water churning non-stop around the gill net.
2 whitefish in it.
Well now, there are actually 2 more big whitefish caught in the net. The moment he hauls the gill net onto shore, the disappointment over that rabbit that just got away is instantly wiped clean. Looking at the 2 big gifts in his hands, Elk is giddy to the point of silence, and the fish dam just keeps handing him small fish. The gill net keeps hauling in big whitefish, and his land traps keep quietly ticking along. Plus, the meat from the 2 sea otters he put away earlier, and Nelu's food setup is basically complete. Calling him fully taken off now is spot on.
Let's go!
After a few days of falling temperatures, the river ices over in a rush, and this cold wave that torments the others actually hits at just the right moment for Like, because earlier the temperature just wouldn't drop. His precious camel deer meat even started to spoil. To save this hard-won camel deer, Like had no choice but to work through the night, slicing all the meat and smoking it dry. With the mercury finally dipping below 0, the whole Arctic has become one giant natural freezer. Lake's days-long struggle to keep his meat from spoiling is finally over. He sits at the shelter entrance eating smoked venison for breakfast, while Brother Squirrel beside him looks even more relaxed. Its pre-winter pine cone stash is finally ready to be savored. Brother Squirrel clutches a pine cone and chews until scraps litter the ground, then trots back to its granary for another and keeps on munching. Even when Like comes right up to it, Brother Squirrel doesn't flinch. Maybe it can tell this 2-legged fellow already has more camel deer meat than he could ever eat, and couldn't be bothered with the 3 melons and 2 dates it's stashed away. Any other contestant would have already helped themselves. If it were Roland, he'd strip that squirrel's pantry bare. He's pulled that move before. Only Likey treats it as a pet. The real test of surviving the deep winter is only just beginning, and now what weighs on him isn't food anymore, but that half-finished shelter of his. Because so far, the place still doesn't have a real fireplace or chimney in it. If he keeps using an open fire pit, thick smoke will build up inside the shelter. So before the worst of the Arctic cold truly sets in, Like has to hurry and install a heating system in his shelter that he can rely on for the long haul. The problem is, only starting the work now is clearly a bit late. Snow already blankets the ground, the riverbanks are starting to freeze, and the clay he used to dig up easily is now much harder to come by. When he does dig some up, it's full of sand. And honestly, this clay is nowhere near what you'd want for building. But at this point, Lakey doesn't have many options left. So to toughen the clay up, he mixes in some dry grass. Then he grabs a thick log as the chimney's inner support frame and smears the prepared clay over it layer by layer. Once the clay gradually sets, he just needs to burn out the wood, and a hollow smoke channel will remain. From there, he can keep building upward on that base, and a complete chimney will basically take shape. You have to admit, it's a clever idea. The catch is, although Likey has made plenty of pottery before, he's never built a large clay chimney in sub-zero conditions. So, whether it can withstand the Arctic's constant freezing and thawing is anyone's guess right now. After a long bout of hard work, the chimney is finally finished. He lights a test fire, and the dense smoke pours cleanly out through the flue. Seeing the setup working perfectly, Likey finally exhales in relief. From here on, he can pretty much call the first phase of his survival done. He has food, his meat storage problem is solved, and now even the most critical heating system has been built. What he actually needs now, ironically, is to stop all the extra building work, conserve every bit of strength, and pour more of it into fishing and checking traps. Once deep winter hits, how long a contestant can last isn't just about having meat anymore, but whether they can keep getting enough high-calorie food, especially fat. Even though Likey has the moose meat every other contestant dreams of, that stockpile can't last forever. And as the competition drags on, the fat stored in his own body will also be slowly burned away. So if he wants to drag this contest all the way into the final stage, fish are still a food source he absolutely cannot afford to give up. And as it turns out, Likey's judgment is spot on. Just last night, he suddenly heard a fierce commotion on the river. And when he rushed over to check the gill net, he found an enormous pike caught in it. After measuring, the pike came in at a full 92 centimeters, the biggest fish Like has caught since arriving in the Arctic. Even more impressive, this isn't his only recent haul. In just 3 short days, his gill net has produced 6 fish in a row. With those fish and his big cache of moose, Likey's real concern now isn't his next meal anymore, But how much longer this competition is going to drag on? The moose may be huge, but if the others still won't tap out, that pile of meat and fat will slowly get chewed through. That's why the gill net's ability to keep producing food is the real key to extending his lead. Tonight, that 92-centimeter pike naturally becomes Lakey's dinner. But just as his food situation finally starts to smooth out, the chimney that had only just eased his mind begins to act up again. Like had feared the clay would dry too quickly, so he'd been keeping the fire low, hoping the chimney would firm up bit by bit. But when he checked it again, the last thing he wanted had happened. The chimney had split. And it wasn't just a tiny hairline crack. As the clay kept going through cycles of freezing, thawing, then refreezing, new cracks kept spreading across the surface. So all that progress that had looked solid before might have been just a short-lived illusion. If these cracks keep spreading, the worst-case scenario is that the entire chimney could collapse. At that point, Likey wouldn't just be losing a chimney, he'd be losing his main heat source for the entire winter. After pouring days into this build, only to have it fail, even the usually steady-tempered Like finally snapped. Since slow drying still left him covered in soot, he decided he wasn't going to baby it anymore. Like just blasted the fire, aiming to bake the whole chimney dry in a single shot. If it splits, he'll fix it, then keep the fire roaring. One way or another, this setup has to keep working tonight, because in this Arctic now, he has no chance to rebuild from scratch. He'd finally taken care of meat, then gotten fishing under control, and yet the thing that really broke his composure in the end turned out to be this chimney he thought would be the easiest issue to fix.
Chimney.
At dawn, Jex was down by the river, a bit unhinged, daydreaming about taking the championship, muttering that fish should just swim over and rabbits wander up to her. Once you stop worrying about saving face, you'll wish for anything.
Today, I want to be a champion. The hare come close. The fish swim towards me. I am satiated, full.
She sang that song from 10:30 in the morning all the way to noon, and if it hadn't started snowing, Jex might have kept singing until dark. As she walked back along the riverbank, the little stream she'd once used for water was now bone dry, and that simple wooden bridge suddenly made the spot look a lot like Roland's stone house shelter from Season 7 of Alone, the Arctic. Back then, Roland's stone house shelter really was astonishing. Roland's stone house was so impressive people dubbed him a wilderness machine. Imagining future surplus rabbits and fish, Jex planned to smoke them for storage, so he just chose to repurpose the old frame and convert it into a smokehouse. Jex collects dry grass nearby and slowly plugs the top of the wooden frame and the gaps between the stones. Then he uses branches to build racks inside the smokehouse, leaving an open space at the bottom for a fire, so the warmth and smoke can rise smoothly through the chamber. And he just needs to hang the meat above. And the whole pit shelter becomes a natural mini oven, like smokehouse. With the smokehouse done, Jex looks over at the gill net nearby. She hadn't expected the wish she'd made that morning to actually come true, but the dark shape in the net signaled that a big fish had already been caught. Good grief. Talk about falling asleep and someone hands you a pillow. Just as Jex hauls the gill net up onto the shore, she saw right away that the burbot's belly was oddly swollen, so she grabbed her knife and opened it up.
Holy.
Jex tugged out one tiny fish from the burbot's belly, and only after pressing everything out did she grasp how many little fish this burbot had swallowed. In this food chain showdown, Jex ends up the real winner. This buy one, get 8 free haul makes her blurt out that it's just insane, and the smokehouse she built today can finally be put to use. Jex lights a campfire at the bottom, letting the heat slowly travel up through the passage, and lays the prepared fish evenly across the racks. Looking at this heap of fish in front of him, he finally, for the first time, truly feels what it means. It's called food abundance. That girl who used to do nothing every morning but squat in the bushes picking berries, and now, right in front of her, is an entire pile of fish she actually has to think about how to store. If you'd told Jex this a couple of weeks ago, she probably wouldn't have dared believe it. Back then, Nero also built a smokehouse first, before he'd even hunted his first sea otter, planning ahead to smoke and store the surplus meat he hoped to have. Not long after, 2 sea otters all but walked up to Nero's door. Now Jex finds herself in that same spot. Thinking ahead to the food she may need to cache for the winter, she's built a smokehouse in advance. Maybe God isn't willing to disappoint those who prepare seriously for life, so their efforts don't end up wasted. Or maybe nature never promises that hard work will always pay off. Because real luck isn't something you just wait around for. It's when a chance shows up and you're already prepared.
Knowing that I can finally take a breath, I feel abundant. I have food. I'm thriving. There's a wink to success.
We're gonna take one of these little baby pike, wherever the heck they are. This was a pike that was found in the stomach of a burbot.
As Arctic temperatures keep dropping, it's now down to -6 degrees Celsius. Jex wakes up in the morning to find her gloves frozen stiff, and she's always used to tucking damp gloves under her sleeping bag at night, counting on body heat to slowly warm them till morning. This time, a small slip-up leaves the gloves frozen stiff, hard as 2 planks. With no choice left, Jex sparks up the fire again, hoping the flames will thaw and dry her frozen gear. But as soon as the fire gets going, a new problem appears. As the shelter warms up, moisture trapped in the earth and in all the frozen items starts releasing all at once, and the whole shelter quickly turns into a steam room. Damp mist everywhere, even her clothing is visibly steaming. In a normal environment, dampness is mostly just uncomfortable, but in an Arctic winter, it's extremely dangerous. Because once clothes stay wet for long enough, they'll freeze quickly in the cold outside, drastically reducing their insulation and constantly draining body heat. Only now does Jex realize that the shelter she was once so proud of, though it blocks some of the wind and snow, hides a huge flaw in ventilation and moisture control. There's a hole in the roof, yet the damp air inside still can't escape fast enough. As the temperature outside keeps dropping, this problem will only get worse. Even more troubling, his fingers and toes are already getting harder to keep warm, and the real deep freeze still hasn't really hit. Right now, Jex, for the first time, seriously wonders if this shelter he worked so hard to build with his own hands can really carry him through the winter. His food stores have only just begun to pick up. His body has only just crawled out of its slump, and already the brutal winter hits him with a fresh test. Jex's mood begins to sink again. He misses his mother, misses his friends, longs for that ordinary life with clean laundry and a warm bed to sleep in. He might loathe this cursed place, but for that $500,000, he can only grit his teeth and carry on. As deep snow at last covers the land, Andrew's shelter also enters its first true test of winter. Seen head-on, it resembles an indigenous teepee, but as soon as you move to the side, you can clearly see a lean-to-style frame. It's basically two types of shelters forcibly fused into one. Outside, it's wrapped in thick natural cover, with a waterproof tarp over it to stop the snow, which not only cuts down on heat loss, but also keeps snow and meltwater from slowly seeping into the shelter. Andrew has even left a wooden panel on the side that can be kicked open from the inside, so if flames suddenly flare up at night, he can kick it open and bolt out through it. You can see this little detail really matters. When you're keeping a fire going inside a sealed shelter all winter, the real danger isn't just the cold outside, but also fire and heavy smoke, which can turn a safe home into a deadly trap at any moment. Fortunately, this hybrid shelter, part cone tent, part lean-to, has been performing quite well so far. Outside is a white wilderness now, yet inside, the steady campfire still holds the air much warmer. For Andrew, this spot feels like a secluded refuge, shut off from the outside world. As long as he can stay dry, keep the fire going, and have enough firewood, then even when deep winter hits, this shelter will still let him hang on. By this stage, Andrew's daily life has turned into a fixed routine, repeated until it's almost mind-numbingly dull. Right after waking, he uses the chicken blood in a pot to melt snow for drinking water, taking care of his basic needs for the day, then makes himself some Yunnan pine needle tea, restocks firewood, and checks his traps. If he's lucky, he scrapes together something to eat. The next morning, he's up and running through the same routine all over again. Right now, the only real bottleneck is food. The traps are empty yet again today, which means that no matter how comfortable his shelter is, no matter how settled his routine is, unless he can lock down a steady, reliable food source, all his efforts so far will end up counting for nothing. So Andrew leaves the familiar area behind and scout farther to the south to see if he can find terrain better suited to large game. Right now, one rabbit only keeps him going a couple of days. What could truly change the course of the competition is still a big animal. If he really managed to run into a moose, then with his shelter already set up with ample firewood and water, Andrew could realistically jump from starving to frontrunner overnight. Fueled by that hope, he presses farther south, and soon, he spots a line of very fresh animal tracks in the snow. Andrew perks up instantly. Heavy snowfall has one major advantage. Any sign left before yesterday is basically covered up again. So if he can still clearly see footprints now, it most likely means the animal hasn't been gone for long. For Andrew, who's had almost no shots at big game, this is clearly a great sign. He pushes on along the tracks, his excitement climbing with every step. He even starts to feel that the chance he's been waiting for all this time might finally be coming. At this point in the competition, there just aren't many weak players left. Now, it's all about who can seize that one chance that will change the course of the game. Of course, Andrew wants to be the one who lands a big animal. But today, nature clearly isn't planning to hand him the answer so easily. As he moves deeper into the brush, the growth around him thickens steadily. The clouds swallow the sky, the light fades, and the deep snow erases every familiar feature of the ground. Slowly, Andrew senses something's wrong. After hiking a while, he's somehow back where he started. He heads off a different way and walks on, but soon enough, he's back at the same spot again. Now he's truly pacing in circles, in terrain with almost no landmarks. If they can't constantly correct their heading, it's very easy to drift to one side without noticing, slowly curving off until you've walked a giant loop. and the forest ahead, smothered in snow and tangled with shrubs, is just the kind of place where that problem really kicks in. Worse yet, while pushing through those dense thickets, he even ends up losing his bear spray. He doesn't dare press his luck any further and has to call off today's exploration for now and head back to camp in one piece. He still hasn't taken any big game on this trip. At least he's learned this area is well worth exploring more. Once he's properly prepared again tomorrow, he'll be back. Early the next morning, Andrew puts on a sharp-looking red winter parka. He hopes this red coat will give him a fresh start, shake up his luck a bit, so he can finally break out of his daily rut. The lakes are icing over, and the river is slowly sealing shut. The Clark boat he once poured so much effort into building now just sits abandoned on the shore, with almost no chance of ever going back into the water. The surface is freezing fast, and the age of the little boat is done. Andrew figures most of wilderness survival is mental. Skills matter, of course. But later on, what really determines when you finally hit that tap out button is whether, alone and backed into a corner, you can stay calm through setbacks and still get up the next day and do what needs to be done. Right now, Andrew's most urgent wish has been stripped down to something utterly simple. Today, no matter what, he just wants a bit of food. But one empty trap after another brings in nothing, and Andrew grows more and more anxious. Right when his spirits are about to collapse, a turning point finally comes.
I've got a hare.
Yes! Thank you. You would not believe the relief I'm feeling at the moment.
Only someone who's really starved knows how much safety a single rabbit brings at a moment like this. For the next couple of nights, he won't have to sleep hungry. As Andrew heads over to the next trap, he actually finds another rabbit. Well, now, he was just worrying about what to eat tonight. And just like that, his food worries for the next few days vanish. The unexpected haul makes him lightheaded with relief, and Andrew even starts to imagine he could win.
I think I've got a real chance of winning this.
After missing the caribou, Aaron has basically exiled his bow and arrows to the cold palace. For now, his best bet is to go all in on the rabbit strategy. At first light, Aaron's back to churning out snares. 8 won't cut it. Then make 8 more. All 16 small traps are ready to go. Seems the snowshoe hares here are in serious trouble today. Even though he doesn't like slaughtering so many rabbits, in this environment, if he wants to stay alive, he doesn't have much choice. With all 16 snares set, Aaron heads back out along his trapline. At this point, his plan is crystal clear. Rabbits will cover his protein, and once the river locks up with ice, he'll turn to fishing for fat. As he gets to the first snare, the tracks in the snow have clearly multiplied. Rabbit and lynx prints crisscross everywhere, as if the animals just held a dance party here. Fortunately, there's a whole rabbit hanging solidly in the first snare today. Even better, despite lynx prowling the area, none managed to snatch this meal before him. Aaron quickly secures the rabbit, and after taking it down, he sets even more snares nearby. Checking snares becomes Aaron's daily routine, and his luck doesn't let up. The snares are doing their job, rabbits getting caught one after another. It seems the snares he set yesterday have truly turned this patch of land into rabbit hell. Aaron hauls the first 5 rabbits back to camp. It's nearly -10 now, and his bare hands on the snow and ice freeze fast, so they quickly freeze stiff. Once his hands warm up again, Aaron goes back out to check the remaining snares, and unexpectedly brings in another 5 rabbits. You don't get this kind of frenzy even at New Year's. Back at camp, Aaron quickly processes a rabbit, gets a quick jolt of energy, then heads out to check more snares. He doesn't expect the line to keep producing, but it does. Early the next morning, Aaron is back checking his snares, and yesterday's surprises just keep coming. Almost every snare has a rabbit in it. Even when he finds a rabbit half-eaten by a lynx, Aaron just shrugs and says that half can stay for tonight's midnight snack. He has no time to be upset and starts collecting the remaining rabbits. When he's hungry, he stews a rabbit, eats his fill, then goes right back to checking snares. Up to this point, Aaron has already taken 51 rabbits, breaking the show's all-time record for rabbit catches on alone. Aaron's large-scale trapping approach is clearly working well. This will surely leave valuable lessons for future contestants. In fact, the reason Aaron caught so many rabbits this time isn't just that he set a huge number of snares, is also linked to their breeding cycle. Snowshoe hare numbers swing sharply on an 8 to 10 year rhythm. This season lands right at the top of the hare boom, with the snowshoe hare population surging and the added effect of his snares and traps, which is what allowed Aaron to set this epic record in rabbit hunting. That day by itself, Aaron put away 3 rabbits, an almost unheard of luxury, even by alone in the Arctic standards. As the cold deepens, a solid sheet of ice now covers the river. At this point, Aaron has more than enough protein. For him, fat has become the scarce resource. Before heading out to ice fish, Aaron sets a pot of rabbit meat to stew, so that even if he walks off the ice empty-handed, a hot meal will be waiting the moment he gets back to camp. Using a wooden pole, Aaron slowly probes the ice thickness as he goes. Some spots are nearing 4 inches thick, and that thrills him. Because once the ice is solid enough to walk on, he can finally leave the shallows and go straight to deeper water to set his jigging line. one major reason he hasn't been catching fish for so long. A key problem is that the water by the shore is too shallow, so fish don't stay there long. But once the surface ice is over, Aaron can finally get out to deeper water he couldn't reach before. And that's where the big fish are most likely hiding. So he put out 2 lines as a trial run, and it was clear he knew just how dangerous thin ice can be. Each time he heads onto the ice, he brings a long pole along, so that if he does fall in, he can lay it over the hole and use it to haul himself out. Though he talked so cautiously, once Aaron set foot on the ice, he still pushed farther out, prodding the ice with his wooden pole as he went, listening to the faint cracking under the ice. And even he had to admit this really wasn't the smartest move. But when you're this desperate, you take risks. He badly needs fish. He's already got rabbits. What he truly lacks now is prey that can replenish his fat reserves. Even though the ice still isn't thick enough to feel safe, Aaron still keeps edging forward. And the farther he goes, the more the ice under his boots freaks him out. Some patches are just about an inch thick. This isn't as if walking on thin ice anymore. This is literally walking on thin ice. He keeps testing ahead with the pole, and the instant something feels wrong, he pulls back at once. Then reality smacks him in the face. After all that effort, the water's only 6 feet deep. Right then, Aaron finally gets why he hasn't been catching many fish before. It's not his fishing line that's to blame. This whole section of the lake just isn't deep enough. Still, this little scouting trip does prove one thing. The shallows near shore just aren't good for fishing. Next time, if the ice thickens enough, he's heading much farther out to hunt for real deep water. Up to now, 50 days have passed, and the late stage of the competition is turning into a clash of gods. The beaver warrior Nelu has begun cultivating fish, and once winter hits, fish meat becomes every contestant's most prized resource. Having endless fish is basically like already sitting on the champion's throne. But the moose war god Like is just as confident. With the moose meat he currently has, he can survive at least another 20 days. And on top of that, he's already caught 6 big fish. I can't even imagine how long he might drag this season out. I used to think one moose war god alone was already crazy enough. Who'd have thought we'd get a beaver war god running a full-on fish farm, plus a trap war god Aaron, yanking up rabbits till his hands ache. Never in any season have I seen anyone bag 51 rabbits. Seriously, who else could manage that? Even Jax and Andrew, who'd been starving before, have now stocked up on food in the dead of winter. For now, at least, nobody out there is going hungry. So who's really going to take the crown this season? Hard to say. What do you think?